He was never supposed to be home that early. The private jet had landed 2 hours ahead of schedule. The meeting in New York wrapped up faster than anyone expected. Contract signed. Hands shaken. Another multi-million-dollar deal secured. For billionaire tech CEO Daniel Hayes, it was just another successful day. But instead of heading back to his office or calling his assistant, he made a rare decision. For the first time in months, he wanted to surprise his wife. No cameras, no headphones, just a quiet moment at home. As his black luxury car rolled through the iron gates of the mansion, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement. Maybe they would have dinner together. Maybe they would talk. Maybe things would feel normal again. The driver opened his door, but Daniel waved him off. "I've got it." He wanted this to be personal. The large wooden doors opened with a soft click as he stepped inside. And immediately, something felt wrong. The house was too quiet. This mansion was never quiet. There was always music playing softly from hidden speakers. Staff members moved politely through the halls. The faint sound of dishes in the kitchen. Laughter. Footsteps. But now, nothing. No music. No movement. No welcome. Just silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. Daniel loosened his ties slightly, his polished shoes echoing against the marble floor as he walked further inside. "Victoria?" he called gently. No answer. He glanced toward the dining area. Empty. The living room? Perfectly arranged, untouched. A strange tension began to rise in his chest. Then he heard it. A sound so soft, he almost thought he imagined it. A cry. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not a scream. Just pain. A fragile, trembling sound that didn't belong in this house. Daniel froze. His heart began to pound harder with every second. The sound came again, faint, shaky, almost like someone trying not to be heard. It was coming from the guest wing, from the part of the house where his adoptive mother, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, stayed. Suddenly, the air felt heavier. His steps quickened. Each stride down the long hallway felt slower than the last. The expensive paintings on the walls blurred as his focus narrowed. Another soft sound. A broken whisper. "Please." Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. He reached the corner that led to Evelyn's room. The door wasn't fully closed. It was slightly open, and from inside, he heard a voice. Sharp, cold, unfamiliar. "You should know your place." Daniel's blood ran cold. His hands slowly pushed the door open, and what he saw next made his entire world stop. Before we tell you what Daniel saw, you need to understand something very important. Evelyn Carter was not just some woman living in his guest wing. She was his beginning. She was his second chance at life. 35 years ago, in a quiet city hospital, a newborn baby was left behind. No visitors, no flowers, no name written neatly on a birth certificate. Just a tiny child wrapped in a thin hospital blanket, sleeping in a room that no one came back to. That baby was Daniel. Doctors and nurses whispered about what would happen to him. Foster care, transfers, paperwork, a system that often forgot children like him. Except someone didn't forget. Evelyn Carter. She was a nurse at that hospital. She had already worked a double shift the night Daniel was born. Her feet hurt. Her eyes were tired. Her own life had not been easy. She was a widow. Her husband had passed away years earlier. They had never been able to have children. But the first time she held that baby in her arms, something changed. She didn't see an abandoned child. She saw a son. People told her it would be difficult. That adoption paperwork would be long. That raising a child alone on a nurse's salary would be nearly impossible. She did it anyway. Daniel grew up in a small one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and second-hand furniture. There were no fancy toys, no luxury vacations, but there was love, real love. Evelyn worked nights at the hospital and sometimes cleaned houses on weekends just to afford school supplies. She attended every parent-teacher meeting, even if she hadn't slept. She clapped the loudest at his school plays. She framed every certificate he brought home. When kids teased him for wearing old sneakers, she would kneel down and say, "One day, you'll walk into rooms they only dream about." And he believed her. Daniel studied hard, earned scholarships, built his first software program in college, failed twice, tried again, failed again. And every time he wanted to quit, Evelyn would sit beside him at the tiny kitchen table and say, "You are not defined by where you start." Years later, when Daniel's tech company finally exploded into success, reporters called him a self-made billionaire. But Daniel knew the truth. He was mother-made. The first major check he ever wrote wasn't for a car or a vacation home. It was for her. A beautiful house with a garden. A place where she would never have to worry about rent again. No more working, he had told her, holding her hands. It's my turn now. For a while, everything felt perfect. Then Daniel married Victoria. She was elegant, sophisticated, came from generational wealth. She knew how to smile for cameras and charm investors at Gallus. In public, she praised Evelyn, called her mom, took photos together. But behind closed doors, something colder lived her heart. She didn't like that Evelyn lived with them. She didn't like that powerful guest learned Daniel had been adopted. And she definitely didn't like that his mother didn't match the polished, high-society image she wanted to project. Small comments began slipping out. Sharp tones, forced smiles, subtle exclusions. Daniel noticed tension sometimes, a quiet shift in the room. But he convinced himself it was nothing. He was busy building empires. He didn't see what was building inside his own home. Not clearly, not completely, until that afternoon. And when he finally saw the truth, there was no unseeing it. Daniel pushed the guest room door open and froze. Time didn't slow down. It stopped. Evelyn was sitting on the floor beside the small coffee table, her back slightly hunched, her fragile hands trembling in her lap. Pieces of white porcelain were scattered across the polished wood floor. A teacup, shattered. Tea had spilled across the rug like a dark stain spreading outward. Victoria stood over her, perfectly dressed, perfectly styled, and absolutely furious. "I told you not to touch the fine china," Victoria snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through steel. "Do you even understand how expensive that set is? My friends were just here." Evelyn tried to push herself up slightly, but her hands shook too badly. "I was only cleaning," she said softly. "I thought I could help. I didn't mean to. Just stop." Victoria interrupted harshly. "You don't belong in rooms like this. This isn't your world." Daniel's fingers tightened around the doorframe. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. "This is not your house," Victoria continued coldly. "You're only here because Daniel feels sorry for you." "Sorry?" The word hit him like a physical blow. "Sorry?" This woman worked double shifts to feed him. She skipped meals so he could eat better. She wore the same coat for 6 winters so he could have a laptop for school. And now she was being reduced to pity? Victoria still hadn't noticed him standing there. "You should be grateful we even let you stay here," she added, her tone filled with quiet cruelty. Most women wouldn't tolerate this. That's when Daniel finally spoke. "Let her stay." His voice was low, controlled, but deadly calm. The room went silent. Even the air felt frozen. Victoria turned slowly. The confidence drained from her face the second she saw him. Her lipstick smile disappeared. Daniel, you're home early." He didn't answer her. He walked past her as if she wasn't even there and dropped to his knees beside Evelyn. The billionaire who commanded boardrooms, now kneeling on a floor covered in broken porcelain. "Mom," he said gently, his voice completely different now. Softer, shaken. "Are you hurt?" Evelyn looked up at him, her eyes glossy but still warm. She forced a small smile, the same reassuring smile she had given him after every childhood fall. "I'm fine, baby." Baby. That word shattered something inside him. She called him that when he was 5 and scared of thunderstorms. When he was 12 and failed his first math test. When he was 19 and ready to quit college. Baby. Even now, even after being humiliated, she was protecting him from worry. Daniel carefully helped her to her feet, brushing tiny porcelain pieces away from her dress. His jaw tightened. His breathing slowed, but his eyes changed. When he finally stood up and turned toward Victoria, he wasn't the husband who left that morning. He wasn't calm. He wasn't patient. And he definitely wasn't blind anymore. For the first time since walking into that mansion, Daniel Hayes saw the truth. And this time, he wasn't going to ignore it. Daniel had faced hostile investors, ruthless competitors, billion-dollar lawsuits designed to destroy everything he had built. He had sat across from men who tried to intimidate him. He had negotiated deals where one wrong word could cost millions. But nothing had ever made him this angry. Because this wasn't business. This was betrayal. He looked at Victoria, not as his wife, not as the woman he once loved, but as a stranger standing in his home. "How long?" he asked quietly. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Victoria swallowed. "Daniel, it's not what it looks like." "How long?" he repeated, firmer this time. "Have you been treating my mother like this?" The silence that followed was heavy. Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked away. That silence said more than any confession could. Daniel felt something inside him settle. Not confusion, not doubt. Clarity. He turned toward Evelyn, who stood quietly near the couch, her hands folded together as if she were the one who had done something wrong. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly. She avoided his eyes. "I didn't want to cause problems in your marriage," she said gently. "You worked so hard. I didn't want to add stress." Those words shattered him more than anything Victoria had said. Even now, even after being humiliated in her own room, she was protecting him, the same way she always had. When he was young, she shielded him from the pain of not knowing his biological parents. When he failed, she protected his confidence. And now, she was protecting his marriage. Daniel inhaled slowly, steadying himself. Then he did something no one in that hallway expected. He pulled out his phone. Victoria stepped forward. "Daniel, please. Let's just talk about this." He raised a hand slightly, not aggressively, but firmly. He dialed. His assistant answered on the first ring. "Yes, sir. Cancel all my meetings for the week," Daniel said calmly. His tone was controlled, precise, the voice of a CEO making a final decision. "And contact my lawyer. I need him at the house within the hour." There was a pause on the other end. "Yes, sir." He ended the call. Victoria's eyes widened in disbelief. "Daniel, what are you doing?" He looked at her with steady, unshaking eyes. "Anyone who disrespects my mother," he said clearly, "does not belong in my life." The words echoed in the quiet hallway. The household staff had gathered silently, pretending not to stare, but unable to look away. Victoria's voice trembled now. "You're choosing her over me?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "She chose me when no one else did. No anger, no shouting, just truth. And truth is powerful when spoken without fear." Victoria tried to step closer, her confident mask finally cracking. "You're overreacting. It was just a misunderstanding." "No," Daniel interrupted calmly. "It was a pattern, and he was done ignoring it." Within a month, the divorce papers were filed. Victoria attempted apologies. Tears. Promises to change. But some actions reveal a person's heart too clearly. Respect isn't something you perform for guests. It's who you are when doors are closed. And that afternoon, Daniel had seen who she truly was. And once you see the truth clearly, you can't pretend you didn't. 6 months later, the mansion felt different. Not quieter, not emptier, just peaceful. The tension that once lived in the hallways was gone. The air no longer felt heavy. Laughter echoed more often now, soft, genuine laughter that didn't need permission to exist. Evelyn had her own garden in the backyard. Daniel had it designed just for her. Rows of fresh roses, white lilies, a small wooden bench under a shaded tree. Every morning, she stepped outside with a cup of tea, this time in a simple mug she loved, and tended to her flowers. Her hands no longer trembled. Her smile no longer looked forced. She looked lighter, free. Daniel made sure she never felt unwanted again. He rearranged his schedule to have breakfast with her twice a week. Sometimes they sat together in the evenings, talking about nothing important, just memories, old stories, quiet jokes. The mansion no longer felt like a showroom. It felt like a home. Later that year, Daniel attended one of the largest charity galas in the city. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers. Cameras flashed from every angle. Business leaders, celebrities, and politicians filled the room. Everyone expected Daniel Hayes to speak about expansion plans or new global investments. He walked onto the stage in a tailored black suit, confident as always. The applause was loud, respectful, powerful. He adjusted the microphone. For a brief moment, the room fell silent. I've stood on many stages like this, Daniel began calmly. I've spoken about innovation, growth, and success. He paused. But tonight, I want to talk about where success truly begins. The audience leaned in. He turned slightly and looked toward the front table. Mom, he said gently, his voice softer now. Will you come up here with me? A quiet murmur moved through the crowd. Evelyn hesitated at first, surprised. She wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just her. Slowly, she walked toward the stage. Daniel reached out his hand and helped her up the final step, just like she had helped him climb countless steps as a child. The room rose into a standing ovation. Cameras flashed even brighter now. But Daniel didn't look at them. He looked at her. Everything I am, he said into the microphone, emotion steady but clear, is because of this woman. Evelyn blinked back tears. This is my mother, Daniel continued proudly. Not by blood, but by love, by sacrifice, by courage. The audience grew quiet again, listening. She chose me when I had nothing to offer. No name, no future, no guarantee of success. He paused, letting the words settle. And if anyone ever makes her feel small again, they won't have a place in my world. There was no anger in his tone, only certainty. Evelyn's tears finally fell, not because of the mansion or the wealth or the applause filling the ballroom, but because the little boy she once held in her arms, the baby no one else wanted, had grown into a man who remembered, a man who honored her publicly, a man who understood loyalty. As Daniel wrapped an arm gently around her shoulders, the applause continued. And in that moment, it was clear, real family isn't about skin color. It isn't about status. And it definitely isn't about blood. It's about who stands beside you when you have nothing, and who you stand beside when you have everything.